This is St. Louis on the Air from St. Louis Public Radio. I'm Elaine Cha.
Lemon lime is a vibe, which is a very 2023 way of putting it. Pharmacists were some of the original inventors of these flavorings. You're not tasting lemon or lime, you're tasting lemon lime. It was kind of a gold rush in the soda business.
When I was growing up, 2 green glass bottles took space in our home fridge. My grandmother's slightly salty, minerally salubrious Perrier, and for upset tummy times, a citrusy remedy, 7-Up.
There's something very special about the taste of 7-Up that's unlike any other soft drink. Maybe because 7-Up has no artificial flavor and no artificial color. Never had it, never will. And no caffeine. Never had it, never will. Whatever it is that makes 7-Up so refreshingly different, the other soft drinks never had it. Ha ha ha. Never will.
So my family felt good about 7-Up for us because no artificial color or artificial flavor, and no caffeine was certainly good for the children. But I never saw a link between those green bottles beyond color and bubbles until this past week. That's when I encountered Ian Bogost's Atlantic essay, All Soda is Lemon Lime Soda, and got a fascinating pop of 7-Up history that's also a story of beer, water, and prohibition in St. Louis and across the country. Joining us to talk about his fizzy findings is Ian Bogost, director and film and media studies professor of computer science and engineering at Washington University and contributing editor at The Atlantic. Ian, welcome back to the show.
Great to be here.
Now, where were you when the idea to explore lemon lime history first bubbled up?
I was at the beer hall at the Anheuser-Busch factory. I happened to be doing a tour, and I was getting my daughter a soft drink because she couldn't have beer. And, I ordered her a Sprite or whatever. And they were like, oh, no, we have Sierra Mist. Oh, no, we don't have Sierra Mist because it had just been discontinued. We have something called Starry, which is Pepsi's new lemon lime. So it was, and I tasted it and I was like, well, they all taste the same. It's just lemon lime soda. And then I realized, I don't even really know what lemon lime soda is or where it came from. And that sent me down the rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm. And I hope that you had as much fun writing this essay as it was to read it. So when I say bubble up, there's definitely some effervescence that I was getting from what you have put together. Now, the story of the person who invented 7-Up has a very local tie. Is that something that you already knew or were expecting?
I had some sense of it. I had forgotten it, admittedly, and then I rediscovered it. The inventor of 7-Up, a merchandising tradesperson named Charles Leiper Grigg, was a Missouri native who moved to St. Louis to kind of make a go at big business around the turn of the 20th century, and had some successes, had some failures, and then out of that came 7-Up.
Yeah. And insofar as the lead up to 7-Up's invention, you just mentioned failures and successes. Tell us about the failures.
Yeah. So Greg had taken a number of different kind of turns in merchandising and in sales and general stores and that kind of thing. And remember, this was 120 years ago, and what it meant to do merchandising was very different. But right around this time, between 1900 and 1930, let's say, a lot of technological change is happening in what we now call the soft drink industry. And before this, if you wanted to get a fizzy soda, you'd get it from a soda fountain or you'd get it from a pharmacy. And there are historical reasons for that we can talk about. And there were bottles, but it was gross. They didn't last very long. They couldn't be capped properly. They were hard to distribute beyond very local domain. So this is sort of the moment when soda's hitting it big, bottled soda's hitting it big. And sensing this opportunity, Greg invented, while working for another firm, an orange soda that he called Howdy. And that became the Howdy Company, and they took a swing and then kind of a miss at marketing and selling an orange drink.
And so this idea then of combining lemon and lime, how novel was that? I mean, they're both citrus. They do have very different and distinct flavors. What did you find about that?
Yeah, and this was just it's so difficult to find any definitive answers about the early period in kind of contemporary soda. And some of it's because the companies don't really have records of what happened, and there's not a lot of history. Some of it's because they're very they keep a lot of secrets, right? Like, the formulas of soda are kept very close to their chests and so on. So lemon lime as a flavor is really complicated, and it doesn't seem like it would be. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's really strange. Lemon lime together in a beverage, in a soda, had clearly been around for a long time before Greg put it in 7-Up. And if you read some of the histories or the news stories, over the years about 7-Up, you'll see things like there were 600 lemon lime drinks on the market at the time. And that's not exactly right, because there were a bunch. They were regional. They were distributed in very small areas. They probably didn't have brand names, but it was just like whatever bottler's lemon lime soda. But it was known. It was commonplace by that time. That wasn't new. And this was the main question I was interested in asking and answering when I was researching this story is, how did lemon and lime get put together in soda? And when you think about it, it's really uncommon to see lemons and limes either as fruits or as flavors in any food, almost.
Right.
You put you might have a lemon pie or a lime pie. You might have lemon in your cocktail or lime in your cocktail. You might use lime as an acid in a dish, or lemon. And there are exceptions. It's not like it never happens, but it's quite rare in the history of human gastronomy to put the two together. And we don't really know where it came from, but we do know that mixing flavors was really common in soda fountains and in pharmacies. Everyone was trying to find like the novel taste, or to hide one taste with another, to do something interesting to distinguish themselves from the guy down the street. And on the one hand, that's probably where lemon lime originated. But then there's another weirder part of the story, which is that the kind of bright, acidic flavor, taste, sensibility of citrus, of tart citrus, has kind of been with soda water, with carbonated water, forever, at least with artificially carbonated water, which goes back to England and a guy named Joseph Priestley, who invented a method to do so in the mid 18th century. And when you introduce carbonic acid into water, it makes it slightly acidic. So that's the all soda is lemon lime soda argument. There's always a sort of limey, lemony, acidic, bright backdrop,
Right.
even to plain sparkling water.
I mean, we've seen that with LaCroix, at least, is the thing that I remember being introduced to as far as a sparkling water with either lemon or lime in it. Now, there was something else that went into the original formulation that has to do with levity. Was meant to raise the spirits. What was that? And did it raise any eyebrows at the time?
Yeah, so Greg put lithium in 7-Up. It was originally called lithiated lemon lime soda, or sometimes you see it as lithiated lemon soda. And lithium would later become like an antidepressant treatment. But at this time in the 1920s, it had a history of kind of being a cure-all, headaches, stomach aches, kind of as a mood enhancer, which is something that got picked up later by the psychopharmaceutical industry. And the reason that he would have done this, broadly speaking, is that, again, soda water and fountain drinks were very much related to pharmaceuticals. You go to the pharmacy to get, your Coca-Cola. And pharmacists were some of the original inventors of these flavorings. John Pemberton, who invented Coca-Cola, was a pharmacist. The same with Dr. Pepper in Texas, and that goes really all the way back to the idea that mineral waters, like natural mineral waters, were curative. Some lithium springs, were natural, and that was construed as somehow curative. And so the idea that a soda would be not just refreshing, but healthful, and that it might solve some malady you had, that was extremely common at the time.
Right. That was where the Perrier connection sort of came through for me in thinking about what was in our refrigerator. I don't know that it lifted my grandmother's mood, but it definitely took up some space. Now, in the intro, we referred to water and prohibition. Ian, how did those factors come into play when it comes to the development of what became 7-Up?
So there were a few things at play. In St. Louis, we already had a sophisticated beverage industry, mostly from beer. And a lot of us know the history of beer in St. Louis. And there was a lot of water here, still is, and that was a benefit. And then once an industry develops, it's easy for it to expand. But one of the things that I mentioned earlier is that bottling technology had also developed in a more sophisticated way by the 1920s. We got bottle caps. We started to get the cold chain, and that was important for sodas. And of course, during Prohibition, everyone who made alcoholic products was scrambling to find any alternatives, and so there was a kind of an opening to take advantage of some of the local expertise and resources, not to mention newly developing interests in bottled soda. Been around for a while, but now there were fewer alternatives, and some of these things would have been used as mixers for illicit booze as well. So that was on the one hand, it was a benefit for someone like Greg. But on the other hand, there was kind of a gold rush in the soda business at the time, which explains why Howdy had difficulty taking off. Orange Crush from up north in Chicago ended up becoming the choice orange drink, as it kind of still is, along with Fanta. So Prohibition opened some opportunities for what we call soft drinks today. But then, of course, by the end of the 20s, when Greg finally got the product out the door, the stock market collapsed, the Great Depression started, and so there were new challenges to address.
We're talking about the history of the lemon-lime beverage 7-Up, which was invented in St. Louis in the 1920s. With us is Washington University Professor Ian Bogost, who recently wrote about 7-Up for The Atlantic. Now, 7-Up was invented here in St. Louis, but it didn't stay. Why is that, Ian?
The way that 7-Up developed, 7-Up was really successful, although it took it a while to ramp up. So it kind of took through the 30s until it became a truly national product. And it's a solid brand. Like, you still know 7-Up. Everyone knows what 7-Up is. But by the mid-century, it had started to falter a little. It became construed a little bit as an old-fashioned drink, like your grandfather's lemon lime soda. Even though the category of lemon lime, because it had been around for so long, was really strong. And that's when PepsiCo and Coca-Cola started to introduce competitor products in the 50s and 60s. Pepsi's a strange company that launches and kills a lot of products. They had one called Team at this time, Teem.
Yes.
But Sprite is the one that we know, and Sprite is the much more successful lemon lime soda today in the marketplace. That was first launched in 1961, and so that's when things got difficult. But 7-Up was still very much a going concern. It had these extremely successful ad campaigns of the 60s and 70s, kind of built around the counterculture movement. That's when we got the Uncola
Right.
slogan. And all this was happening, it was based in St. Louis. All this was happening in St. Louis, kind of in much the same way that Anheuser-Busch had developed not just a beer business locally, but all of the supporting networks and services around that.
Yeah.
And all of that persisted until the 1970s when Philip Morris essentially launched a hostile takeover bid for 7-Up. It was still a family, well, mostly family-owned company, like almost 50% family-owned by descendants of Greg and his business partners from the 20s. And after the Philip Morris purchase, it changed hands several times over the 80s and 90s. And today, 7-Up is owned by Keurig Dr. Pepper. So it's actually quite similar to what happened with the InBev purchase of Anheuser-Busch later on, that kind of once you take a local company, even if it's a national or an international brand, once you take a local company and consolidate it in the hands of a larger company, they tend to move the operations and all of that support network, the advertising, everything else, to the other places where they can gain efficiencies by doing it. Yeah, so it just kind of slowly left town.
And have you come to any conclusions about whether it matters that 7-Up was invented here in St. Louis? And like, what do we do with that knowledge?
Right. It's a really interesting question because there's nothing novel about 7-Up in its formula. The idea of a lemon lime soda wasn't new. Something that was very much new for the time was this sort of strong, weird brand name. Like 7, no one knows what 7-Up means, by the way. Anybody who tells you they know it, some people think it's the 7 ounces or like pH of 7, which is wrong. There's all these stories. No one has any idea. That's certainly something that has at least a local connection. But again, that's not uniquely St. Louis in any way. In a lot of ways, like these big businesses of the 19th and 20th century, these manufacturing consumer goods businesses of that period in time, they were established in the places where they happened to arise. So Coca-Cola was invented in Atlanta, and the Coca-Cola Company is still based in Atlanta. And if you go to Georgia, everything's a Coke, and you have to drink Sprite. You couldn't possibly drink 7-Up. And that was just kind of an accident of geography. So it's a little bit of a sad story, I think, because as with so many local industries, here in St. Louis, the reasons why 7-Up was dismantled or sort of scattered around the country and around the world doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the city and the region. It just kind of happened instead of not happening. But if you ask, how could things have been different if we had 40 additional years of local, international branded soft drink development? What would that mean for our economy, for employment, for the sort of cultural role of St. Louis in the beverage sector, at least? Then that's a question we'll never know the answer to.
I mean, one soda company that I associate very strongly with St. Louis, and it comes up like every 314 day, is Vass Soda. And that was actually founded before 7-Up came on the scene. I believe it was founded in 1916. Did you gather any insights into why a company like Vass, would have stayed here where, 7-Up did not?
The regional sodas were the norm between the like mid-late 19th century and the early mid 20th, and a lot of that was because bottling. Like bottles are heavy. You have to put stuff in them, and then you distribute them locally. And so a company like Vess is the descendant of many of these companies. Some of whom invented their own products. I think that Vess had other bottling locations, not necessarily even regionally. Some in the Midwest, some in North Carolina. And there are and remain. It's not like 7-Up was the only beverage company, the only soda company in our area,
right?
And there are lots and lots more of these. How one becomes successful and what it means to be successful has changed over the years. So back in the day, your local soda was just your local soda, and you kind of wouldn't think about it. And now that we have these national brands, people think of a local drink or one that's less familiar somewhere else as being somehow maybe purer, like more more desirable, like a microbrew, but for soda.
Yeah. No, definitely.
And that's just it's just a function of how tastes and the marketplace changed.
Mm-hmm. No, humidity and heat, they're not unique to St. Louis, and nor is lemon lime soda. But in your Atlantic piece, you asked, does lemon lime actually cool us off? So what's the answer that you landed on, Ian?
The short answer is yes, but not maybe in the way that you think. The culinarily, when you add an acid to like a spicy dish, it's counterbalancing that heat. It's a different kind of heat than the physical heat. But that sense of acidity, that kind of like brightness of acidity, almost acting like as a kind of having a scouring function on your palate, that's real. And it's one of the reasons why lemonades, why citrus in general, feels like a curative to the heat. And so when you have the sense that a lemon drink, a lemonade, a lemon lime soda, or even just a sparkling water, because even though you might not know it, it has that bright acidity to it. The reason you might like feel a yearning, a hankering for it when it's hot out, is because there is something about those flavors, that flavor profile, not to mention the materials themselves, that sort of cool down or clean off the palate. Like they oppose that sort of undulous thickness of fats or of heat. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like lemon lime sits at one side of the soda lexicon, and maybe on the other is something like cola, which is similarly difficult to describe in terms of its why you want it, why do you have a yearning for it. But it's spicy and complicated and thick, but still refreshing because it too has lemon or lime or some kind of citrus oil in it. Mm-hmm. And one way to think about lemon lime as a curative for heat or as a flavor is that it's not really the lemon or lime that you're tasting. It's this sort of conglomeration of those flavors.
Right. The vibe.
In the same way that like mixed berry, right. I talked to this food scientist who said, lemon lime is a vibe, which is a very 2023 way of putting it. That you're not tasting lemon or lime, you're tasting lemon lime, which is its own thing.
Yeah, and this final question: you talked in the piece about pepper, and that there are pepper drinks. You said, I wish I had time to explain further. Can we expect that? Because I do love a Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, Dr. Pepper is so weird. And Dr. Pepper and 7-Up merged, so there's a relationship there. They merged in the 80s and are still together under a different umbrella. The short story here is that Dr. Pepper found a way to recategorize itself federally in order to avoid conflicts around the regulation and contracts for cola distribution. So Dr. Pepper is, to me, in the cola family, but like a little spicier. Uh-huh. But for Dr. Pepper, no, it's a pepper drink, and that allowed them to grow beyond Texas at a key point in their history.
Well, I guess that gives a little bit of insight into why I may prefer the pepper to the Coke. Ian, thanks so much for talking with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Ian Bogost is Director of Film and Media Studies and Professor of Computer Science and Engineering at Washington University. He's also contributing editor at The Atlantic. His piece, All Soda is Lemon Lime Soda, is available online at theatlantic.com.
This episode was produced and edited by Emily Woodbury, with audio engineering by Aaron Dorr.
Podcast design by Ala Kouziz.
Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
St. Louis on the Air proudly supports local artists by using music from Life Creative Group.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations, and leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thank you.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.